Hi, Lisa.
Hey. Hello.
How are you doing?
Well,
Oh,
still working on the cough here. So
uh,
took some cough medicine, hot ginger water, hoping we'll be all controlled.
all controlled. I get it. All right, I am going to share my screen because some of you may remember Lisa from before, and she is rejoining us. Hold on. My computer is telling me it is, time to sleep.
Oh,
Not, not time to be doing work right now. I understand. I hear you. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Pramila, are we good to go? Shall I get started? I'm assuming we can get started, so we'll get started.
Yes,
All
it's
right.
all good to go,
Okay.
Dr. Serena. It's
Okay.
all yours. Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for attending today. Very excited to be here, and also bringing back Lisa, who agreed to come back on. Yay. So here is some information that I shared before about who is Lisa and some of her background. And we were kind of talking before, with it being the holidays and all and whatnot, and, seeing clients and, what kind of, we're talking about like things that come up in session with clients, a lot of issues that people seem to struggle with around the holidays and that, different things, that come up. So I'm curious what you see as being some of the more, I don't know, more common things or like more pressing issues, however you want to put that.
sure. Yeah, if I had to put it in 2 words, it would be have tos.
Oh, yeah, right. Yes, the obligatory things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I think this really started around Thanksgiving time.
Yeah.
There's just these holidays equals traditions, gifts, family gatherings. Um, and so what I found happening were people just feeling like they have to do, they have to attend, they have to bring this, they have to do that. And I asked why. And the answer
No.
was, because that's just what we do. Okay, and how do you like that? Well, I'd rather not do that. It's overwhelming, it's stressful, etc. So why do you do it? Because that's just what we do. So, if you think about it, so many have tos and traditions started way back when. And I'm sure it was beautiful and wonderful. And I'm not saying that some of them are not still, but it doesn't mean that we should just continue to do something because that's just what we do. So I've really been encouraging people to stop and think about, how is this serving you? I like to think about energy. We're energetic beings, right? We feel heavy or we feel light. We know that some things raise our spirits, brings us joy, and then some things just kind of bring us down. Um, and there's enough things that bring us down that we're not in control of. So, hey, in my world, if you can control what you do and where you go and who you put yourself around, why not make some choices to raise your energy or keep your energy protected from other situations, people that will bring it down? And the struggle always becomes, but I'm going to feel guilty. I'm going to feel bad. I'm going to upset them and so on and so forth. And I said, yes, but whose feelings should we be concerned about? So, that drives us back to the self-love, self-care that, so many of us do such a poor job with. But
Yeah. Right.
that to me is part of the self-care, making
Mm-hmm.
choices that serve me. And it's not selfish. That's the thing that I think people really struggle with.
Agreed.
It's being selfish.
Yeah, and even just like that word, it has such a negative connotation to it that people really like, I don't want to look like I'm selfish. And I'm like, I don't really understand where this notion came from, because it's like, well, you kind of, I mean, when you're on an airplane and you're putting the oxygen mask on yourself first, that's being selfish, and yet it's essential and necessary to do in order to survive. So it's kind of
Right,
like, this is essential for your survival. And how is this any different, in this context?
right,
And I mean, just kind of related to what you said with the whole making a choice. I really like how you put that, that here's a space that we actually have some control over how we are influencing our own moods, our own energy states by what choices we're making, that really dictate, our state of being for a period of time, right? Like I know that that's something that even as counselors we struggle with, right? And clients, I know my clients have struggled with that too, so I see that a lot. And I think it is essential, oh, there's that word again, essential, to recognize that, like what you said, just from, to keep kind of this energy balanced is really looking at, well, how are the choices you're making, you um, exhausting that energy. Like I think of it as like an energy vampire.
mm-hmm,
What's draining your energy and what's
yeah,
adding to your energy, right?
yeah,
And like what you
right.
said, and I think that's a great way of putting it. And yeah. So what do you like, what have you noticed when people are talking about this guilt? Because guilt is a huge thing around the holidays too. And I've also encountered that. And just wanting to not want to break tradition,
Right.
and not want to be that person that does that,
Yeah.
right? Like I don't want to be, that person that, gets blamed for this kind of a
Right.
thing and scapegoated.
Right.
So how do you approach that, or what things have you found work for people when they're in that situation?
Well, that's a bit of a process.
Yes, yes, it is.
One time's just not going to solve it.
Right.
But I really like to go down the road of having a discussion of why is that person's feelings more important than yours?
Mhm. Mhm.
And that that can lead to a pretty big discussion. And the ones that I'm thinking offhand right now, it was so clear because the person that they don't want to disappoint is the person that creates a lot of conflict.
Oh,
And so there's, other people other than my client that are also just basically kowtowing. And I make the point, do you realize how much energy is going to maybe the unhealthiest person in the family or in the room?
yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. And and
Wow.
and do we want to encourage that? Because everybody would say, well, I wish they would be different. Well, sure you do. But why would they change if everybody is just making sure that they stay happy because they don't want to ruffle their feathers?
Yeah, that's like that people pleasing, rocking the boat, not wanting to rock the boat kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
or get the repercussions of it. But so that's the
Yes.
period, it's a process,
Yeah, it is.
and what I tell people when they're going through this, trying to take themselves into more of the number one position, is that it's going to really feel weird, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be a part of you that feels bad and guilty. And then there's going to be another part that feels like, yes, good.
Yes.
Freedom.
Right.
I'm glad I got to do what I wanted to do. And I'm glad I didn't have to da da da. And anytime that happens, I got to tell you the part that goes, oh, that felt good to not do that thing,
Yeah.
always a little bit more than the guilt part.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the thing that continues to drive it. And I'd say, it's kind of like practicing a muscle. Now you got to
Yeah.
keep doing this. Now, one of the things I do suggest to people when they're going to switch from that mode of I've always been doing for you and now I'm going to do for me
Mm.
is to have a conversation up front.
Before it happens.
before it happens.
Okay.
Let them know, however, how much they want to share, that's up to them, but something along the lines like, I've been doing a lot, saying yes a lot, and I've realized that that's been really draining for me. And, that I'm struggling and I'm stressed. So I've learned, whether they want to share they go to therapy or not, or whatever the deal is, I've learned that I really need to take care of myself. So that means that sometimes I'm not going to be able to say yes. And I want you to know it has nothing to do with you. It's really all about me trying to take care of me. So
Mm.
I'm sorry if I'm going to disappoint you. Again, I don't want to disappoint you. I don't want to hurt you. I don't mean to, but I also really have to take care of myself. And if you
Mhm.
have that conversation up front, then when you have to say no, you feel like you're saying no, you say, this is one of those times. I just hope you understand. That's the best you can do. And then the other
Right.
person, then again, they're free to think and feel however they want to.
Yeah, and I think part of that too is just recognizing that you're also not responsible to take care of that afterwards because
Right.
then you're going back to that behavior
That's
which
right.
you're trying to not do. So
Correct.
yeah, so
Correct.
it's like don't, just be cautious about that and
Correct.
and recognize that, it is a hard, it's like, it's cutting that umbilical cord basically, and that's hard to do for a lot of people because, it's one of those things that, and well, so I have like, oh, so I always have like millions of thoughts whenever you and I talk, and it's like, okay, which path do I go? I
I
don't
know.
even
I
know.
love
It's,
it.
oh my goodness. So, it's one of the things that was coming to my mind was, the fact that it's like that when you mentioned this, when a person does do this for themselves, right? That this feeling of liberation comes for them. Like, wow, like that was like freeing almost, right? Like they've kind of
Mhm.
broken this pattern. They've broken this chain, which, maybe they didn't think that they could do, and now they've done it. And so they're enjoying that, and they could see that they're able to do these things. And it might be something that takes some time, which is fine. And
Yep.
like you and I know, some things do take time, and it's one of those processes that happens. And at the same time, you mentioned that it's also like that feeling of liberation helps with those feelings of guilt.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you've noticed that, because guilt tends to be like very loaded,
Mm-hmm.
um, it could be very, um, it could be larger than just personal and family guilt. It could be like, infused from the culture, infused from the, the type of religion a person engages in, spiritual beliefs, whatever that may look like. So
Right.
I'm curious what your experience has been working through some of that with individuals when it becomes more complicated.
You may have to be more specific because it's not anything different than what I said. I may have to
Okay.
have a discussion about, I think it comes up a lot, just the idea of morality
Mm,
and this idea that somehow are ingrained with this idea, as you said, as we said earlier, that you have to sacrifice. And I'm just going to do a broad brushstroke here that oftentimes religion brings the idea in that you have to sacrifice yourself for others.
yeah.
And that's a huge piece of it. So it feels very ungodlike, unchristlike, unchristian-like. And at the same time, I talk about, but where's the love for you?
Mhm.
Is the message that that one person is more valuable and their feelings are more important than yours, because where is that, how is that fair, or how is that right?
Yeah.
So when we can start to go down into the weeds like that, then I
Yeah.
start, maybe opening up a conversation. And then also I say, well, who's in charge of your happiness anyway? Is it you or is it someone else? And they'll always say, well, me, of course. Exactly. So
Right.
does that not mean you need to make choices that fill your tank?
Yeah.
And what happens when you are in a constant state of not doing that? You get drained, and people can feel that. It's really easy, right? Like all you have to do is sit and feel your energy of doing something that you don't want to do and doing something that you do want to do, right? One's gonna feel light and open, the other
Oh,
one's gonna
yeah.
feel heavy. And that's what stress is at the end of the day. So if you constantly do that, you constantly put stress on the body. And then I say, right. And how does that help you in the long run? And when you go down, what happens? And what happens to your energy? And how do you influence the people around you now? Wouldn't you rather be around someone who's up and light and fun versus someone who's down and heavy? Well, of course I'd prefer to be around the light. Well, okay then. So if that's what you want to be around, how about you be that? Which means
Yeah.
you got to make those choices for you. And then again, you really just have to get over the discomfort. If I can cognitively get them to
Yeah.
understand, which it's actually not that hard for them to logically get it,
Right.
then it's more about just take a little baby step
Yeah. I
at a
agree.
time. And the whole cultural thing, get it, get it, get it, get it. But the same thing stands true. Like, where did this cultural belief come from? Okay. 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. Well, uh, are we still going around in horse and buggies? And, what about telegrams and things like that? Like, why don't we just stick to those things then?
Right. Like, why do you have an iPhone or an
Right.
Android?
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
If we're gonna keep tradition, let's keep
Exactly.
tradition. That
That's right.
sometimes I have brought that up with clients too. And it's like, well, do you use a phone? Do you have a cell phone? Do you like, communication is like
Right.
things are different. Things do change
Right.
as we move forward, as we progress. And sometimes that means that we do things differently in our day-to-day experiences as well, that
Right. Right.
also serve a different purpose.
Right. Our life is different.
Yeah,
I
like,
mean, it's
oh,
very different than what it used to be.
yeah, it is. Oh, yeah, yes, that is very true. We can go on a million different ways with that
Right.
one too.
Right.
Yeah,
And again, I certainly don't want to in any way, shape, or form say that traditions aren't good. They
right,
can,
of course.
right? It's just like decide. Is it certain?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I agree with you. I mean, I think there's always a place for traditions, and they definitely serve a purpose. I think when it comes down, to the individual, I mean, and that's one thing that, I've had conversations with clients as well, where it's like, okay, well, if you're dreading this and you're seeing it more as kind of like why do I have to do this? And, you're not getting anything out of it and you're doing it for not really sure the
Mm,
reason that you're doing it, then that's something that we explore.
yeah.
What is the reason for? And then, oftentimes too, what I've discovered with clients is that they will find a different way of looking at it. Like it's a way to stay connected with certain family members
Mhm.
that they don't usually have connection with unless it's
Right.
around traditional like
Right.
holiday,
Yep.
times. And so then that becomes like, okay, so maybe it's then not the tradition that you focus on. It's more this is what I want to focus on is that I'm connecting with these family members that
Yeah.
I enjoy connecting with, but it's
Yeah.
around this thing that I don't
Yeah.
like doing so
Yeah.
much,
Yeah.
right? So how do you then find the balance, between those two, right? And
Yeah.
making
Yeah.
that
And
choice.
right. And maybe you do just make the choice because if you're kind of, is it going to fill you more to connect with the people
Right,
than to not?
right. Yeah, and if that's like the only way that you connect, how does that work? Uh-oh.
Right. And only you will know that. But that's right. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
We're good.
I think you froze or I froze. Somebody
Oh,
froze. Yeah,
okay.
but we're good now.
Okay. Well, I was just going to make the point that if you're looking for connection, maybe what we say is like, hey, I know we normally see each other at da 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 da, but could we not just figure out a different place and time if
Mm,
that's what's important to you?
Yeah, exactly.
I
That
mean,
could
let's get
absolutely.
out of the box.
Right? We're all about getting outside the box.
Right?
Why stay conventional?
These boxes are so nicely tied up and sealed and bowed and everything.
Yeah, they just, well, but they do help organize things. I'll tell you that.
No,
I
they
mean,
do.
they do. They really
They
do.
do.
And sometimes, though, you do need to think outside the box. I mean, sometimes that's kind of what is required in order to be more efficient or just, find something, I think also, especially when things get stagnant. It's
Yeah.
it's too much inside the box, maybe. I mean, I don't know.
It-
Sometimes I've seen that with clients too, is too much inside the box of
yeah.
expectations, that could be what we were talking about with like self expectations, other expectations, just things that are, what we're expected to do kind of a
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So,
I was just thinking, you could potentially just stay in a box, but get out of the box within the box.
Hmm.
Meaning, you show up and this is the role you typically do. This is where you normally sit. This is what da da da. But there's nothing to say, oh, why can't you just shake it up? Do something different, right? It might feel weird or not again, because, people might be, oh, well, that's different. Well, why not? Let's just try something new.
I'm in agreement with that. I think, doing things a little differently sometimes is necessary in order to kind of, just kind of nudge your own edges a little bit and kind of explore authenticity. And that's
Mm,
something that I know you and I had talked about, and also I've talked about on the show, on the podcast, is this authenticity sense. And that's something that's been, I think, really important too, is just kind of exploring how does that come about when you're put in this kind of, it's hard to be authentic when you're like not being authentic. I mean, it's like, how do you be
say that
authentic?
again.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's like, how do you be authentic when you're not being authentic? It's like,
Oh, wow. Okay. Well,
like,
that's a
how does
million
that
dollar
work?
question.
It's like I'm so confused by that. But it is like, I mean, that's the thing, is like it's hard to, I think, connect. I think it's hard for people to find that connection within themselves when they are struggling with something
Yeah.
that doesn't feel authentic to them because it
Yeah.
isn't authentic to them.
Yeah.
And because of that reason, it's like part of this, well, we do it because we always do it, or, it's expected or whatever.
Right.
Yet it's not within their own truth of authenticity, so to
Right.
speak. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's just a thought.
Well, I mean, that's a big thought. That's a big thought because we want to have the most authentic relationship with ourselves
Yeah.
first and foremost. And then all your decisions from there will become more sort of in alignment with what feels right for you.
Right.
But as you and I know, this is the work that we end up doing with all of our clients because we lost who we really are way back, in childhood. I mean, for safety purposes and for love and affection and attention, we had to mold how we show up, what we do or don't do
Yeah.
order to be safe, etc. And then same thing with society. So by the time we're older and now we're not quite happy, but why, right? And that's
Right.
because you haven't been able to live a life that feels right for you. So that's the whole big work in therapy is to get authentic with yourself. And from there, all the magic happens.
Yeah, it's like that, have you ever seen that visual with the, the comfort zone? It's that circle, little circle, and then it has the bigger circle where
Yeah.
the magic happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's like that little, there's like a space, and
Yeah.
I always like point that out for my clients and my students. I'm like, yeah, this is the bridge. And it's like that bridge in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So it's that rickety bridge, with the alligators underneath, and you never know if you're going to survive or not, but you
Yes.
got to cross it. So it's
Yep.
like,
Yep.
if you want the magic, you got to cross the bridge. And
Gotta cross it.
you got to cross it. And I
Yep.
think it's about that transition, right? It's all about that transition. It's not the change itself that's scary. It's kind of the, like what you said, it's kind of that process that is important,
Yeah.
that part of it. So yeah. Yeah, that actually, now that I'm thinking about it with the new year coming up, could be an interesting, quote unquote, New Year's resolution, quote unquote. I say
Mm.
quote unquote, because
Mm-hmm.
yes, I'm not a huge fan of New Year resolutions because a lot of times they fail because
Right.
they're not, you know,
Right.
yeah.
Well, I would say to anybody, the most important goal of your entire life
Mm,
is to get authentic with yourself, to have that love and acceptance relationship with yourself, which is what
mm,
authenticity is. I am who I am. I'm not perfect, will never be, but I don't have to worry about trying to show up or do or not do for you or you or you. It's just about me. And there's
mhm.
so much freedom in that, and the way people's lives transform
Thanks.
as they get closer and closer to that, it's magical. I mean, there's no other word. Just miraculous, magical, whatever you want to say, but it is the number one goal, if you ask me. And
No,
that that
I
never
agree.
ends, right?
Oh, it never ends because you're always kind of unpeeling
On
that.
peeling and then on growing too. I want to make it real clear to people that you're not always healing from wounds. At some point, I do believe you do heal.
Become whole.
You become whole, and then there's all this other really cool stuff just starts happening.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then you're like,
That's the
what?
beauty of coming out of the depths of the stuff.
Yeah, it's like the lotus
Yeah.
flower, like it
Yeah.
comes out from all that mud,
Yes.
right? And then it
Yes.
emerges as this really beautiful flower that people
Yes.
see on the surface. And it's like,
Yes.
but you don't see all the muck that it comes from, right? It's like, oh, well, that's like a human being to some degree, when you really
Yeah.
go through your own crap, for the lack of a better word,
Yep.
is, you
Well,
know,
that's true.
that's the muck, right? You
Amok.
emerge, as a whole authentic person that you are, and then your everything kind of it shifts, it
Yeah.
transforms. The
Yeah.
energy is different. Everything is different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that comes from choosing you, which is how
Yeah.
we started today, right?
Which is where we started in the first place.
Right.
And back full circle again. Well, I wanted to thank you so much for being here today. It's about it is about 8 o'clock.
Yeah,
That goes so fast when
it does.
yes, and
Well,
I don't.
well,
Oh,
and thank you for having me back. I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoy doing this. It's just a pleasure.
oh, well, it's a pleasure having you, and it's such a joy to talk with you. And I love our energy when we
Uh,
communicate too. So I hope that was helpful to everybody. And I did want to just kind of open it up to anybody if you have any comments or questions really quick before we close, since we are near the end. If
Quick
anybody,
question, Dr. Serena. I know
yeah.
in 2 weeks we have the holidays. Do we plan to have it 2 weeks post?
Well, I was going to talk about that with you because I know the 25th is the holiday, so we'll postpone that one. But then the 8th of January, I'm having a medical procedure, so I don't think I will be able to do the podcast on the 8th. So I was going to see, I don't know if we could do a pre-recording for the 8th. I have an idea of
We
what
can
I
do, we
could.
can do a pre, and we can take it after this call. Yeah. But
Okay, great.
congratulations once more. 20th episode. That's a
Yes,
huge
thank you.
milestone. Thank you.
Wow. And Lisa, thank you for being the guest for the 20th
hey,
episode.
wow,
Yes.
look at that.
Yay. All
Thank you,
right.
everybody. Have a great holiday season and choose you.
Yes.